Tennessee Life is supported through the financial support of viewers like you. Thank you. Coming up on this tag team edition of Tennessee Life, folks may question the authenticity of professional wrestling, but Dr. Tom Pritchard explains why being a phony will get you nowhere in this business.
Most of the people in East Tennessee understand a real fight. And if they're going to pay money to come see you fight, they want to see you fight.
They perform over 200 shows a year, coast to coast. But now you can visit Pigeon Forge to catch a show at the new home of the Micro Wrestling Federation.
This is the greatest show tour in the United States. We leave it all in the ring every single time.
Harry Thornton is a name Chattanoogans know well. We're taking a closer look at just how Harry helped pioneer wrestling entertainment in the volunteer state.
And to those of us watching at that time, we're just like, whoa, this guy's rude, he's obnoxious, he's loud, he's opinionated.
Those stories next on Tennessee Life.
Thanks for joining us for this edition of Tennessee Life. I'm Vicki Lawson. Professional wrestlers can be anything, but above all else, they have to be authentic. Dr. Tom Pritchard of the Jacobs Pritchard Wrestling Academy in Knoxville gives us a look at the lessons he teaches his students.
The biggest misconception with a lot of people coming in here is that the ring's not a trampoline and the ropes aren't rubber bands. They hurt, especially when you start out. But you have to get used to it. That's why I say you have to do it over and over and over and over. This is more real than people believe or think or know. It's harder than it looks. I've had people last an hour in here and then leave. 1 hour. And you want to be a professional wrestler because it's phony, it's fake. We might know the outcome, but in between, it's up to you to convince me I want to pay to come and watch. I want to see how passionate you are about your business, about your craft. You got to love it, and you can tell.
Your shoes on time, look! Wait a minute! Jen, look! No! One, two, three!
My name is Dr. Tom Pritchard. I am the head coach of the JPWA, aka Jacobs Pritchard Wrestling Academy. I was born in El Paso, Texas, and as a kid, maybe 4 years old, I was walking in our living room and my older brothers were watching this amazing show on TV, a black and white TV of 4 guys running in the ring in basically their underwear. It looked crazy, but it was so intriguing. And I knew from the minute I saw it, there was something there. It just drew me in. And I wanted to do this my whole life. I was 20 years old when I had my first match. I went to New Orleans, Louisiana, wrestled on TV, getting beat by the stars, shining them up. Eventually, I had my first match in Houston, Texas, continued on wrestling all over the country. And eventually, it led me to Smoky Mountain Wrestling with Jim Cornette, probably one of the most fun times of my life. Turning my life into coaching started in 1996. I was offered a gig as a coach in the developmental system for WWE in Stamford, Connecticut. And it just was one of those natural progressions. You don't know if you can coach until you do it. You don't know if you're able to convey a message, convey what you need to do until you try it. And I found that I was more comfortable doing that. Some people get me, some people don't. But it's all a work in progress. I never do the same thing twice. Everybody has a personality, and you have to figure out who to pat on the back, who to kick in the butt. And there's that much distance. So I make a mistake sometimes, but sometimes I'm on track. So people need encouragement, but also some people come in with the attitude of, oh, this is just flip-flops and doing some stunts and things like that. So much more involved. So I either encourage or I kick you in the butt and get you in gear. You just have to connect with them, and hopefully they connect with you and get what you're saying.
Can you leapfrog and just take your
I
time?
moved with my wife to Knoxville after we were finished in Tampa with the WWE developmental system. Glenn Jacobs was running for mayor. He thought, why don't you and I open up a school? He more on the investor side of things, me more on the coaching, hands-on side of things. Because I had done that for WWE. I'd had success in the WWE developmental system. We're in our 4th year now. We've had people signed, we've had people get tryouts, we've had people wrestle all around the local promotions here.
The Thrillbilly Silas Mason and Dangerous Devin Dixon. Oh, trained by the one and only Dr. Tom Pritchard. He taught us everything he knows, so much that he doesn't know anymore.
It's the greatest business in the world, and it's the most heartbreaking business in the world. But I tell people all the time, there's 3 kinds of people. There's those who try, those who give it their best shot, and those who do whatever it takes. That's part of figuring this out. This is a fun business, but it's a hard business. We do a 12-week course. Every day is different. It's a lot of repetition, but the message is the same. This should be fun. If it's not fun for you, you're gonna hate every minute of it. Number 2, you have to be safe. So you want to be safe to know how to fall, safe for your opponent, and you go through the basics and fundamentals. You use that every day. It's what we do in between the action that makes it all come together. That's the glue. That's the straw that stirs the drink. And then once you're done with the 12 weeks, then we do the advanced class. And that's when we get started with the nitty-gritty stuff. That's when we start getting technical. That's when I start really saying, stop, slow down, keep your head up. This is what tells the story. Here, the facials, the body language. Are you hurt? Are you mad? Are you sad? Are you happy? Show me those emotions. Feel them. Everybody feels them. And most of the people in East Tennessee understand a real fight. And just the region itself, they live hard, they work hard, and if they're going to pay money to come see you fight, they want to see you fight. Those who want to do it will, and those who don't and can't won't. And everybody's different, and I've got to reach them. How do I communicate to everyone here who's never been in a ring? How do I explain to them? You have to be authentic. In other words, if you're telling me you're the toughest guy in the world, and you're really not, you're playing a part, nobody's going to buy it. But if you talk to me like you believe it, and you tell me a story like you believe it, chances are people will believe it if you don't tell them any different. We talk about that all the time. If it looks good, you'll see it. If it sounds good, you'll hear it. If it's marketed right, you'll buy it. But if it's real, you will feel it. And everybody will feel it too. If you're real, if you're authentic, if you can do what you say you can do. It's harder to get some people to find out how they are until they find out who they are. Had a kid just last year who's been coming to us and he lacked confidence. And you have to have confidence. He was afraid to come out and be who he is. He was afraid to go out and be a fool in front of people. You can be whoever you want to be when you're in the ring. You can do whatever you want to do in the ring. You got to lose your mind a little bit. You got to say, man, I don't care what anybody's going to say when I go out screaming. I don't care what anybody says when I start kicking and doing these outrageous things. He finally did. He finally broke through. But it's a process. It takes explaining to someone life is a work. Life is a game. Don't take yourself so seriously, and don't take life so seriously because you're not going to get out of this alive.
Greatest tag team ever. He just said, put that in your daggum camera. So you're a little more. That's what I was thinking.
When I first started out as a coach, I used to get so upset when people weren't as passionate as I felt they should be. And man, they just weren't doing the work. They weren't doing what I wanted them to do. Then I realized, and it took me a while to do this too, because again, there were the signs there for me, there were the tools there for me, but I refused to use them. I refused to take it upon myself. And once I did, then I realized it's not about doing things perfectly each and every time. It's about the journey. It's about the process. Not about perfection. I'll take passion over perfection anytime. But you got to get there. And it doesn't just take one big giant leap. Steps. Sometimes I still get frustrated. Sometimes I still get angry. And then I have to bring myself back down and say, whoa, it's the journey. You have to enjoy that along the way.
Later on Tennessee Life, we head to the scenic city to explore Chattanooga's wrestling past. But first, we go inside the Microtorium, the permanent Smoky Mountain home of the Micro Wrestling Federation.
Tennesseans have been fans of wrestling for years, but we've never seen a show like this one in Pigeon Forge.
Crazy how people say, oh, wrestling is fake. Well, you're gonna watch tonight, and when these kids stand on the top rope, they jump off the top rope and land on their back. There's no way you can fake that. Obviously, everyone knows that you're not getting punched in the face, but the physicality that you have to have in this is very, very high. You have to be physically able to do this. My name is Jack Darrell Hillegas, and I'm the owner of the Micro Wrestling Federation. So the Micro Wrestling Federation was started in 2000 by a guy. He was a little guy named Chris Geyer. He went as the Pissed Off Dwarf. I was booking comedians, and I didn't even know micro wrestling existed. Next thing you know, I started booking him shows. I end up booking him one too many shows. He says, hey, I don't want to go on the road that much. I just bought the company from him. And that was in 2008, and here we are in 2022. I'm not in this business because I have a wrestling background, but I do have a wrestling background. When I was younger, I wrestled. So I kind of knew what was going on, and I've been through training and all that kind of stuff. So I just had to let the guys maneuver on their own and then say, no, you can't do this. This is how you have to do it, and just put my touch on it. I was living in Tampa back in the time in my early 20s, and that's where every wrestler lives in the Tampa Bay areas. So when I went into the transition to the micro wrestling, all it was changing a few words. A show is a show. It didn't make a difference to me. I think being able to understand how the matches work and the spots that run in the ring helps me understand it with the guys, because I could work on the shows together. Like, our whole entire show is all collaborative effort between all of us. I let them do what they want to do, and then I watch it, and then I go, hey, well, maybe it might be better if you do this or that, and vice versa. They do the same things. So right now, we're standing in the Microtorium of Pigeon Forge. This is a 300-seat mini arena. We opened up in 2019, and we have 8 to 9 little people that work here. Then I have a road show that tours the entire country. They do 6 shows a week from state to state. Micro 1 is on the road. Micro 2 is our Pigeon Forge crew. They do 4 shows a week here at the building, but we don't make a whole lot of money here just yet. We're on a 5-year plan, and we're reaching our goals that we set. So we do about 8 to 10 road shows a month for Micro 2 here at the building. The guys on the road like being on the road because they do way more shows than these kids do here. Basically, the kids that are here in Pigeon Forge mostly are the ones that have families, and a lot of the kids live here. I wanted to give it 3 years. I gave Pigeon Forge 3 years. At the end of the 3rd year, I knew we were staying and we weren't going anywhere. So I told all the kids, if you guys get apartments here, I'll pay your deposits. So there's like 10 of us living here now. So the ones that live here don't really want to travel. The other kids that are on the road, they live everywhere, so it doesn't really make a difference for them, you know. But it's nice for these kids. They come in, they do a show, and they get to go home.
This is the greatest show tour in the United States. I can say that with full certainty. I'm not ripping on any other company, but I've seen other companies. I've seen the way that this one works. We leave it all in the ring every single time. I can't walk more than here to there without getting tired. But for some reason, when that music hits, I can walk 1.5 miles. It's crazy. We love what we do, and we leave it all out there. We would break our bodies for them to have a good show. Nobody has more passion than Jack does.
It's very inspiring. It shows, it shows us that, hey, keep pushing through. You never know what can happen.
And you want to bust your butt for a guy like that.
And he also inspires us that we can be great when a lot of the world doesn't always do that. Being a dwarf, he's like, dude, you can get in there and do it. He makes us work hard, but he's showing us that we can do anything anybody out there can do.
So my name's Little Miss, and I actually got into wrestling because my cousin, Flying Ryan, has been in the company for a while, and I got to see what he was doing and the money he was making and the opportunities. So they were looking for a girl at the time, and I reached out, and here I am.
I joined last July. I got in this company because I was working in my wheelchair at a logistics company, answering cold calls, moving freight between companies, and I was an entertainer through my band. I was a lead singer on stage. I loved that part of my life. I didn't love my day job at all. So I was miserable one day, and I met Jack on the road at a Diamond Music Hall in St. Louis, and I called him up, told him I was miserable, and he brought me out for 13 shows, and that was it. My job is to entertain as far as going around, making sure everybody's having a good time and trying to translate what's happening into the ring in a story on the microphone. So people come from all over the world and they're coming for a vacation. They're only here for a short time. So they don't follow us, they don't know the story behind it. So I have to tell the story during the match to get them over as far as getting the story over as well as the characters in the ring. And I love the job, it's fun.
My favorite part about professional wrestling is interacting with the crowd. You know, whether it's the kids, whether it's the adults, just putting on a really good show and seeing their reaction and going, wow, these people, they're like regular, normal people, but they just live a different lifestyle.
When I go out in the Target and you get looked at a certain way, you feel like an alien. Like, why is his head so big? Why is he so little? Why? When you're up on the ring or up on the stage and you're doing this, you're larger than life for just 2 hours. And you feel like, I can't describe it, the adrenaline. Even though it only lasts for 2 hours, I'd much rather be stared at in the Ivar character than when I go to my normal life. You know what I mean? It's two different ways of being looked at. And it's addicting. It's so addicting. And you get to inspire people too.
The best thing about being a wrestler is getting on that stage and showing the world that just because you're different, you can be great. I hope what the fans take away, or anybody that sees our show, they enjoy our show, but also no matter what your differences are, you can do anything that you set your mind to.
Back to wrestling champion, baby Jesus!
You know, they may have a disability in life, but they're not handicapped. And then when people see them do what they do, no one comes in here knowing what to expect. And the first thing that they see is when they open up that front door right there is 5 or 6 little ones going, hey, what's up? High five. Welcome to the Microtorium. And the personalities are over and above. And when you open that door and you're hit with that, you're like, whoa, I didn't know I was going to get that. And then you see all the high-flying action off the top rope. I always tell everybody, when you come to a micro wrestling show, you're going to see more top rope action than you will on any WWE telecast. It's amazing how we've been embraced with open arms. From the day we got here, everyone has helped us any way that they could to be successful. So we're glad that we're here. We're not going anywhere. And the good thing about us being in Pigeon Forge is we're not the same old song and dance like everything else. It's wrestling, totally different, you know, and you don't even have to be a wrestling fan to like this. You're gonna come in, you're gonna see the cast of characters that we have, and that's the allure, just to get them in the door. Something new, something unique, and by the time they leave, they may not be wrestling fans, but they're gonna be micro fans.
Harry Thornton, a Chattanooga legend, pioneered the art of professional wrestling entertainment in the Southeast with a flair for conflict that was ahead of its time.
And now, WDEF TV 12 presents In Color Live Wrestling from our studios at 3300 South Broad Street. To tell you about the action, here's Harry Thornton.
Television signed on in Chattanooga in 1954. By 1958, there were 3 stations. And somewhere in the late 50s, the third station, the ABC station, began running filmed wrestling shows out of Chicago. In about 1960, the NBC station picked it up, and then around 1968, they moved to the CBS station in Chattanooga. It was a bigger studio and also in color, and that seemed to really blow it open. And Harry Thornton was the mainstay. He switched stations every time the wrestling programs did, and he was consistently large and in charge. He was very big on radio prior to that, so in the 1940s and 50s, he had built up a fan base via radio. And then by the time he appeared on TV around 1960, the voice was quite familiar, and then we saw the face, and just his presence was a real attraction.
And you people up there in Redneck Land, don't forget it. I'd like to forget it. I think I used to like that guy.
He was perfect for it. I think it takes a flair for the dramatic, a flair for promotion. He did all that. And in 1969, he was recruited to do a live morning TV show, weekday mornings. Nothing like that had ever been on in this market. And Harry, unlike pretty much every other local radio and TV personality, was not all smiles and sunshine and time and temp, as we used to say. He would take them head on. And he thought nothing of making people mad, hanging up on them on the phone when they would call in to argue with him.
What do you mean? How can you compare me to that?
Well, I looked at the Jaybird, and I figured out the Jaybird had more brains in his ass than you all had in your head.
Oh, you know, I say, Harry Thornton, you are a bit of an ass, aren't you?
All I can say is case closed.
And again, you know, to a kid and to those of us watching at that time, we're just like, whoa, you know, this guy's rude, he's obnoxious, he's loud, he's opinionated. Now it's the norm. But in 1969, it was very much an outlier. And he used that morning show to add to his wrestling empire because that gave him another platform from which to promote wrestling. You know, we'd be watching because he would report on who won, the outcome of the matches. And there was never a final outcome. Anything that happened in wrestling one week was leading to the next week. So on Mondays, Harry would announce that the Fargo brothers had defeated the evil Germans, the von Brauners, but the von Brauners have vowed that next week they're going to come back with a special guest to get their vengeance against the Fargos. Well, we're hooked. You know, we want to see it. And he would talk it up all week. People would call in. I mean, sometimes they'd be talking about the hot news topics of the day. And there would be that call out of the blue like, Harry, you know, I'll let you get back to talking about Nixon later, but tell me, what's going to happen Saturday night? And Harry was only too happy to share. But that's what people wanted to hear. So he had a huge platform, and it was controversial, and Harry knew how to draw an audience.
Promoted by Dick Doolis and sanctioned by the NWA, recognized the world over. Join us again next week for Championship Studio Wrestling.
The Chattanooga of the 60s and 70s, not, of course, what it is today. We didn't have quite the downtown, the skyline, the tourist attractions. It was a working man's town, very much factories and foundries and mills. And I could see where a lot of hard-working people would want to unwind on a Saturday night after working hard, sweating it out during the week, by shelling out $3, $4, $5 just to watch some guys in the ring have at it. And that was probably a good recreational thing for Chattanooga. One thing you can see now that is sort of Harry's legacy in a way, the Soldiers and Sailors Memorial Auditorium was built in the early 1920s as a tribute to the sailors and soldiers of the World War. And it was intended to be a place for the symphony, the opera, Shakespearean plays, culture. In the first few years, that's mostly what it hosted. And in the late 1920s, the venue hosted its first professional wrestling match. And the management realized this draws a crowd. And so during certain periods in the 20th century, particularly the 1950s when television came in, the Memorial Auditorium was not doing well. And there were even calls for the auditorium to be demolished. And some of the society matrons in town would be interviewed by the newspaper, and they'd say, you know, all this lowbrow entertainment that the auditorium is hosting, you know, wrestling and roller derby. I mean, if that's the best we can do, let's build a different venue that will be just for the fine arts. But the auditorium did do well. In the 60s, it really bounced back with a lot of other events. Wrestling was probably the one reliable event throughout the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. They could count on wrestling drawing 4,000, 5,000 people a week. And that was a real blessing in the sense that that auditorium is still standing today. It's more beautiful than ever, very popular venue for the performing arts. And one could make the argument it might not be standing today had wrestling not kept it open. And Harry Thornton would deserve a lot of credit for bringing in those crowds. I hope Harry is not forgotten. He did a magnificent job of drawing people. As a kid, I made my father take me to wrestling matches. That's not easy to do. You know, when you're 8, 9, 10 years old and your dad's worked hard all week and you're just basically insisting, you know, Dad, we've got to go to this. And I remember my dad never took wrestling seriously. He would make fun of me watching it on TV. But when he would actually go to the matches with me, he was one of those guys standing on the chairs like everybody else. When you're there live, you get caught up in the event. So Harry should be remembered as a guy who knew the market, who knew how to entertain, who knew how to promote, who gave the customers what they wanted. They wanted a show, they wanted conflict, they wanted resolution to that conflict, and they wanted to get their money's worth for an evening of entertainment, and he provided it.
And wrestling fans, that does it. That's another session of fine professional wrestling brought to you by Nick Goulas, NWA Mid-America Championship Wrestling. We look forward to seeing you again next week. This is Harry Thornton saying so long and have fun.
There's the final bell. I'm Vicki Lawson. See you on the next Tennessee Life.
The dangerous one would show them all what tag team wrestling's really about. Quick tags, in and out. Big boys doing what big boys do, baby. And that is slapping some meat, daddy. Whew. Yeah, it's getting me fired up just thinking about it.
Can we cut the camera for just a minute, guys?